Welcome back to the channel. You guys haven't heard from me in like 8 months since I made that video about my RD-6. Unfortunately, that's kind of the way it goes because when you don't have a shop big enough to actually bring the equipment in, it's a little bit difficult, especially where I live when, the average temperature in January is like 5 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's just a little chilly. I did have a couple good days where I could work on this, and one of the things I did get done, I think like in December we got some nice weather. It was like 40s and sunny. I pulled the differential, got this out, and started disassembling it. I did have some struggles getting these tapers pulled. I ended up using a bar puller and a porta power with a puck cylinder and a big hammer to get all this apart. I mean, this side was dry, and let me tell you, when you get a dry tapered spline, not enjoyable. I think we're upwards of about 25 tons to get that off of there, and that includes 25 tons plus hitting it with a hammer to jar it loose. This side wasn't so bad. This is the first side I got apart. It had oil. The seal was bad, so this has been soaking in oil for years, I'm assuming. So that one actually popped right off. Couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 tons, maybe 10. It wasn't too bad. But I got all these parts cleaned up, and I think I'm gonna make this video kind of a compilation of all the miscellaneous footage that I got over the winter and working on this and stuff like that. And I will go into more detail of how this is assembled, how it works, what I've replaced, what needed to be replaced, how I determined that, what I had to do to it, and as I put it back together. Once everything's clean and I have an understanding of what needed to be done, stuff like that, then I can spend more time making shorter videos on each segment, I guess, when I put this back together. Because right now, the primary thing that I'm doing is degreasing things, getting it really hot, hitting it with hammers, using pullers. It's not exciting. Whereas when it's clean, I can explain how it goes together. I can manhandle the camera without destroying it with what is no more than recycled dinosaurs, basically, all over everything. If you've ever worked with this stuff, you know how disgusting this oil is. Did its job, actually. The bearings, the gears, they're all flawless, but you got to use diesel fuel to cut the stuff, brake clean. It's terrible. You wear gloves, it still gets all over you. I don't have any stains on me right now because I haven't worked on this in a couple days, but usually even if you get it on your skin, it'll leave a black spot for at least a couple days, and you can scrub it all you want. It doesn't come off, pain in the butt, and I don't want it all over my nice camera. The other thing I've been doing is kind of collecting supplies, tools, because you need, for this, you need a big spanner wrench. We're just now, at the time of this video, really starting to get opened up again. If you know, you know, which everybody should understand. It's just a little out of my control. Flea markets, stuff like that. So I've been kind of amassing replacement parts. Like for instance, these oil cups were a really good find. I got all these for super cheap. Now these are like $6-7 a piece if you got to buy them new. I didn't pay that for all of these. They were dirty. I had to clean them. They were in the bottom of the box. Gasket material, stuff like that. It's so much easier to get at a flea market versus ordering it online and stuff like that, especially big sheets. A lot of if you've ever ordered it, you know that usually it comes in like a 12 by 24 roll, and that's kind of a small piece. Whereas when you go to the flea markets, man, you can buy like 36 by 4 foot rolls, no problem, because they're not trying to ship them or anything like that. Bearings and seals, it takes a lot of time to hunt these down, especially when you have a machine this old. I mean, when you're in like the U series tractors and stuff like that, you can usually cross the cat parts pretty easily, but you know, this stuff is a bit more difficult to actually find parts for. So all right, well, that's enough talking. Let's get into the footage that I've amassed over the last 6 months. It's might be a little, it's not going to flow very well, but I'm going to try to make it look good, because I think that there's some interesting tidbits that I did make sure that I got on film, some pointers, some locations of bolts, and kind of like if you're trying to get an idea of what this project entails, the next few minutes will definitely show you exactly what's involved. Now this is going to be another benefit to moving this thing. We're a little close to a wet spot. It's kind of like the drainway, and I parked it close to it, obviously because this winter I needed as much room in the driveway as possible, but it's got to stop. So yeah, this is the inside. I've already taken some parts off of this for just to inspect wear. They got to come out anyway. Some bolts in there that will make it easier to remove those. I think you can just unbolt the fronts of them and they should come out, like just the brake band should stay on there and it should come out, but I'm just going to take them off so it's less things to trip over. Whatever. These 4 bolts have to come out. There's some adjustment nuts. I think that big one right there, which this might be a problem. I do have a big smooth jaw. I think that'll be big enough for that, but you know, still. Wait, I think it's these ones actually that have to come out, not that one. That holds the bevel gear on. Yeah. Okay, never mind. So I did open this up because I had to take the winch off and I wasn't sure if there was anchor bolts there, but it actually ended up just it slides, the extension shaft just slides on there, and then these bolts, it just floats in there basically. But oh well. I took that cover off too, you know, last fall. Just kind of been hanging out there. I'll have to find new seals for that. They're like a felt seal. But again, we'll get to that as the project is going back together. I'm not too worried about that yet. Alright, so I got this thing moved forward. You wouldn't see it in the time lapse, but the gear reduction on this is pretty big. So when I roll it back and forth by pushing it, this turns a lot of times, obviously. So I'm going to have my dad come out here and help me spot, because those bolts have to line up with this plug right here in order to access them to get them out. And that's kind of a small target by yourself, especially like I said, because this thing rolls a lot of times, even when you just move it a little bit. So the other thing, hopefully these line up so I can roll it and get both bolts, and then roll it to get more, so I don't have to roll it separately for each side. But if we have to do it that way, we have to do it that way. I don't want to jinx myself, but I hope that it looks worse than it is, you know? So we'll see. But there's those bolts. They're 3/4. I think there's 10 or 12 of them. We're gonna find out here. They're not super tight, at least here, but good luck if they are. All right, so I got all the bolts out. There's 10 on each side. It was a little bit painful because my dad had to just rock it. You know, I mean, I'm talking like an inch. The gear reduction moved, you know, the whole, I mean, he literally just barely rocking it. Take the bolts out, rock it a little more, 10 on each side, and we're there. And then the bolts, or the plates separated, the drum separated from the plate. So now we're gonna move it and get those fully retracted, and then look at taking out the bolts and the adjustment nuts to get that differential lifted out of there. So we'll see. All right, so I kind of messed up. I didn't record pulling this out. It was kind of, you know, not interesting. But you have 4 bolts there. Take those out. And that allows you to remove these bearing caps, which ride right on this surface here. There's these adjustment nuts. I marked these. I think the adjustment procedure is what I'm going to follow, but I marked them just in case if all else fails I can put them back where they were, because they did work there. I only took this side off. I accidentally put it too far, and that actually was kind of a snag as I was pulling this out, so don't take it all the way off. But you have to back at least one side all the way off, or, you know, most of the way off, in order to give you clearance to kind of work it around that pinion, which obviously has to be in neutral to allow it to roll and work, you know, walk off. These are those plates I was talking about. All those bolts go into, that you have to take off from the outside. Luckily mine weren't seized on too bad. Pretty heavy for a little tractor. So now a pallet here. you know, bearing caps, those are off left and right. The differential, if you would call it that, everything came out pretty easy. This is the front side of it. As you can see, this stuff all is kind of loose, so you got to be careful with that as you're handling the unit. It's very oily. I'm gonna get it all cleaned up so we can actually look at this stuff and get it apart, figure out what we need aside from the primary bearing. I would say somebody else has been in here because that doesn't look like a factory fold over job. Maybe it is, but I don't think so. Of course, body bag and all the parts, that gets to be pretty important when you're talking about a machine that's got lots of different bolts, especially these ones, which are a machined shank for perfect fit inside that cover. I don't know how well the camera does this justice, but that I'm not done. This is what it's supposed to look like. You know, some clearance around the brake bands. That's not quite right. There was, I mean, it was literally holding the brake bands up, so I think there was like 3 inches of sludge in there, to be honest with you. I mean, it was, yeah, at least in the back here. You can see I've started filling a grocery bag. Good stuff. So here's my setup. Just a 10-inch bar puller, a couple of bolts, long shank to pull against. Compression or spreader bar, I guess. It's made out of a leaf spring. I'm guessing there's a proper way to do this, but I couldn't think of it. And in order to keep this as thin as possible, I figured a leaf spring would be the best option. It actually worked very well, because otherwise, if you use mild steel, if it's this thin, you just bend these ears and stuff like that. So quick little plasma cut, and made that up. So yeah, here's one of the brake drums. I got this all cleaned and sandblasted. A bunch of the steels from one side. One of the other inner drums. This one needs to be re-sandblasted. It got a little moisture damage this spring. Here's the other drum, degreased and clean. Just needs a quick sandblast and wire wheel. The bearing caps, all clean and degreased. The main gear cover, clean and degreased. Still looking for the seals for that. Haven't made them up yet. One of the yokes, cleaned and degreased. All the oil passages have been cleaned. The inner plate, the nut, the retaining lock ring, I guess you might call it, the pins all clean. Bolts are clean. I'm definitely making some progress on this, but we're not quite there yet. I've only been working on it after work and stuff like that. Now that we're getting in some nicer weather though, really should start moving along. So yeah, I also got one of these hubs off. I think that's what you would call it. It's the outer part that attaches the brake drum to the final drive. So it goes here. Got that all cleaned. This side was the oil side. I still haven't got the rusted dry side off yet. I think that's going to be a little bit more of a project, but this is as far as I've gotten. Again, once it really starts to warm up here, things should get moving real nice. And I guess that brings us to the end of this video. Hopefully you got something out of that. If you'd like to keep up with what comes in the future, make sure you hit the subscribe button. And if you liked what you saw, hit the like button too, because that also helps me reach more of an audience. People who could also find this stuff useful and the information beneficial to the projects they're working on. So we'll catch you in the next one.